And good morning to you as we approach the last half hour of the morning on our way to Local 4 News at noon. This is what's making news this week online, social media, going viral, that sort of thing, on clickondetroit.com, the Local 4 Facebook page, Twitter, and elsewhere. How does facial recognition work? We've heard about this technology in the headlines, and we're hearing about it more and more as civil liberties people are up in arms that this is going to lead to a police state where it's almost like a George Orwell 1984 nightmare where through being spied on all the time, you're known everywhere you go. There's a camera on you and they know where you're going, who they are, who the entity is that's following you. That's a whole other thing. But let's get into the facial technology, the recognition. Systems are used to extract a face from a scene and compare it to a database of stored images in order to identify an individual. The software systems can measure distinguishable landmarks on the face known as nodal points. Each human face has approximately 80 nodal points. These include the distance between the eyes, the width of the nose, the shape of the cheekbones, and the length of the jawline. The measurements are made on a sub-millimeter scale, so very, very, very tiny. Nodal points are used to create a numerical code called a face print, much like a thumbprint, which represents the face in the database. 3D modeling can be captured using a video image. They are considered more accurate and can even be used in darkness. Now, facial recognition here in the city of Detroit. The Detroit Police Department has been using facial technology for nearly 2 years with concerns raised by the ACLU and other civil rights groups. Last month, the Board of Police Commissioners approved guidelines that endorse the use of technology along with safeguards to prevent its misuse. So police use the tech, restricted to still photos to connect violent crime and home invasion investigations. Several layers of approvals within the department are required before the tech can be used. And the use of the tech to identify people at political events like rallies or protests is prohibited. Police Chief James Craig says the technology has already been used to identify suspects in numerous violent crimes. Now, Representative Rashida Tlaib toured the DPD's real-time crime center on Monday night. Craig invited her after they battled on Twitter about facial recognition technology, which she is opposed to. So for a more in-depth dive, let's take a listen to Sandra Ali's story from the other night.
Yeah, Chief Craig is not mincing words over the comments made by the freshman representative and vocal opponent of facial recognition.
This is an issue that many thought had already been settled, but the controversy heating up again. Sandra Ali spoke with both the congresswoman and the chief today. Sandra.
Devin, Kimberly, you're exactly right. We did. We talked to both of them late this afternoon. And if you've been following this issue for the last few months, you know people have been so emotional on both sides. Chief Craig has invited lawmakers, reporters, and photographers to tour the real-time crime lab. That included Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who he invited back in August after they battled about the issue on Twitter. Tlaib accepted the invitation on Monday, and the Detroit News recorded it all on video.
Analysts need to be African Americans, not people that are not.
On Monday, during a tour of the real-time crime center with the Detroit News, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib told the chief she feels the department needs to use black analysts as part of the facial recognition team.
I think non-African Americans think African Americans all look the same.
The controversial comments captured national attention. We caught up with both the chief and the congresswoman today. The chief not happy with Tlaib's comments.
But the fact that she made that statement, what does that say to the members of this department who are analysts, who are trained, who are white, that they in some way can't do their job professionally? That's insulting.
This is me protecting my residents. My residents ask me to do my job, and my job is to make sure they're not going to be misidentified and detained or falsely arrested because he's using broken technology.
But here's what's troubling. As a police chief who happens to be African American in this city, if I made a similar statement, people would be calling for my resignation right now. We know that. So is it a double standard? And that's the number one question I have.
We repeatedly asked Tlaib today if she stands by her comment.
I stand behind my comments that facial recognition technology is broken and that relying on an analyst that might not be reflective of the suspect is flawed in itself as well.
Now, we should point out, Tlaib insists she believes the technology overall is flawed. We asked Chief Craig if this crime-fighting tool is worth the fight. Coming up ahead at 5:30, we are going to take a closer look inside the real-time crime center, and you will hear his answer to that question.
A lot of people have talked about the invasion of privacy issue. She seems to believe the technology just doesn't really work, right?
She believes the technology doesn't really work. She also feels that this technology in the wrong hands could lead to a lot of issues, which she also, you're going to hear more from that coming up at 5:30.
We'll look forward to your report then. Thanks, Sandra. Yeah, Chief Craig is not mincing words over the comments made by the freshman representative and vote.
Okay, now we are back out here live. I see that there is a lively discussion going on as to whether we're live or not. Obviously, that was taped from the other night on the news, 5 o'clock news here on Local 4, and we showed that for background context. This is how facial recognition works in the process, according to one analyst at the center. Say there was a shooting at a location and there's video of the incident. They get a copy of the video and they get a screenshot, the best screenshot that they can, if there is a shot of the person's face. Then they run it through the software, and then the software spits out mugshot matches, potential matches. Let's say there's roughly about 178 mugshots that come up. Then it's up to us as an analyst, being the human component, to look through all of those mugshots as potential matches and go, that's the guy right there, or that's the woman right there, against the existing database. Now, during her tour, Representative Rashida Tlaib suggested that only black analysts should review cases concerned that black people might be falsely identified by the technology. And she added, quote, "I think non-African Americans think African Americans all look the same," Tlaib told police. She said Wednesday that she stands by her comments, quote, "that facial recognition technology is broken and that relying on an analyst that might not be reflective of the suspect is flawed in and of itself as well," end quote. So is it broken? Well, Tlaib's comments spurred accusations of racism against the Congresswoman, but there has been evidence to show that facial technology is more likely to misidentify people of color. U.S. government tests have shown that facial recognition systems misidentify blacks 5 to 10 times more often than whites, according to a July report. Algorithms designed by French company Idemia falsely matched white women's faces at a rate of 1 in 10,000, but falsely matched black women's faces at a rate of 1 in 1,000. That's quite a significant difference. Mismatch 1 in 10,000 for white women, 1 in 1,000 for black women. The National Institute of Standards and Technology report covered tests on 50 companies and consistently found that algorithms had a harder time recognizing people who have darker skin. White males had the lowest false match rate, while black females had the highest. An MIT study published last year found that gender was more likely to be misidentified in darker skinned females. The reason for this may be that the data used to train facial recognition systems is more representative of males and people with lighter skin, the study suggested. So facial recognition technology is being used by law enforcement all across the country. 21 states, including Michigan, police can search driver's license photos. In 13 states, including Michigan, law enforcement can search mugshots. 19 airports across the country are already using the tech or have announced plans to do it within the next few years. But in May of this year, just a few months back, San Francisco became the first city in the U.S. to ban facial recognition technology, and Somerville, Maryland enacted a similar ban in June. So we appreciate your time joining us here in our midday review of what is making news around the water cooler, the proverbial water cooler, going viral on the web or being talked about on social media, and we will see you back here next week.